Hi guys, I'm John. This is my brother Rob. Together we're Bad Viking. We're excited to chat with you today, tell us a bit about ourselves, answer some questions from our community. But first we want to just tell you about our new game, Strange Antiquities, which we've been developing and working on for probably a couple of years now. It's the sequel to our plant detective game, Strange Horticulture. It's a standalone sort of sequel, so you don't have to have played our original game to play this one. But it's a game about playing an apprentice in a shop called Strange Antiquities, and you have to identify and serve customers with occult and arcane artefacts. It's basically quite similar to Strange Horticulture, similar sort of play style, but we've added in a whole new kind of story, new mechanics, and it's just, we think it's a far superior game, and we're super excited for you guys to finally play it. And so our demo is out now, and you can try that, and hopefully you find something exciting and enjoyable through that, and you can wish list the game for when it comes out later, and we're working on getting that to you guys as soon as possible. In the meantime, we're going to answer some of your questions that you've put to us. We've got some questions, and let's just get into it, I think.
Rob, no need to waste time. So we've asked you guys to send us some questions, which some of you kindly have done, and let's just get into it. Okay, first question right off the bat, not about Strange Antiquities or Strange Horticulture. Coffee or tea or something else?
Oh, well, I'm one of those awkward people
Tea.
that doesn't drink either tea or coffee. And that makes me a very strange British person, I assure you.
Yeah, it's unusual in England not to drink tea, to be honest. So I've slowly assimilated. I resisted drinking tea for a long time, but it's just a nice, comforting drink, and it's a perfect accompaniment to Strange Horticulture or Strange Antiquities, for that matter.
Yeah, my wife thinks I'm very strange indeed, but I will have the occasional hot chocolate.
Okay, here's our first one, actually based on Strange Antiquities. Is Jupiter based off a real cat? That's quite a cool question, because actually there is quite a good story behind that. In that I was on a holiday in Venice in Italy, and if you've ever been, you'll know that it's like this maze of amazing walkways and canals, and it's just beautiful. And I went down a side street and into this little shop full of selling leather-bound notebooks, and the shop felt like Strange Antiquities when I walked in there. And on the counter was this gorgeous cat just purring away. And so I guess that's kind of where the tabby cat inspiration came from. I mean, let's be honest, we were always going to put another cat in the game. But yeah, that was a nice little moment of inspiration.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, coming up with the name was interesting as well, because we enjoy coming up with names for characters and stuff like that, but Jupiter is kind of the key character, really. He's the one that's always present. We had, with Strange Horticulture, our cat was called Hellebore, and that was much easier because we could sort of take a huge range of plants to choose from.
To be honest, we just Googled black plants.
Yeah, black plants, and that was easy. But this one was a bit trickier, and we were like, where could we go with this? We sort of looked into sort of famous antiquarians of the past, tried to find a name there. Nothing really stuck. Both of us, however, are fans of Robin Jarvis's The Depth of Mice book, which I don't know if you guys have come across, but when we were kids, we loved those. And the cat in that series is called Jupiter. And we sort of both remembered those books and sort of were like, yeah, can we call him Jupiter? It would be a really nice nod. So we sort of stuck with that, I think. And yeah, and it kind of just, we were like, yeah, that works for us. I think he's Jupiter now. And then from then on, it's just been Jupiter.
Yeah,
He's Jupiter. Yeah.
All right, moving on. I know it's too early to ask such things, but is there a timetable for Mac support? Same date later on? Yeah, that is something that we do want to get to. We don't have a timetable for it yet. Basically working on the PC version first, and then we'll get to but we will get to it. That is the plan. And onwards. What are some favourite mechanics from horticulture that ended up in Antiquities, plus others that were cut off or changed? To be honest, the gameplay itself, the core gameplay hasn't changed a ton from Strange Horticulture. So if you enjoyed that gameplay of inspecting your plants and looking up stuff in your book and going to locations on the map, that stuff is all still there. Where we've deepened it a little bit is stuff like the closer inspect. We've made that just a bit more interesting, a bit more dynamic. So we really want to be able to put the item in front of you and let you touch it and feel it and stuff like that. But obviously it's a video game, so we can't do that. But we've tried to make it so that you have to be a bit more involved with inspecting an item. So in Strange Horticulture, you right click on it or you drag it over to the microscope, and it gives you a little sentence about maybe the leaves feel a certain way or that it smells a certain way. Well, now you have to use the mouse cursor to hover over different parts of the item to see how different parts of it might feel or smell or make a sound or make you feel a certain way. Like there's quite a lot of ominous, powerful items that might send a tingle down your spine, that kind of thing. So that's deepened a bit. We've added more reference materials, more books and stuff like that. So there's just more to do this time around, I think.
It's also, I would say, what's changed the most is the way the game works is slightly different. It's a bit more involved, as Rob says. With plants, because plants have similar features, they have flowers, leaves, stems. What you're doing is you're comparing things that are already quite similar. Now that you're comparing items that are often visually quite distinct and different, we've had to find more interesting ways to make comparing two items. And so in itself, coming up with the puzzles has been much more interesting. And we've done some much more interesting things with that we couldn't have done with Strange Horticulture. It's hard to describe without just you guys getting hands-on with it, but it's a lot more detailed and involved.
Yeah.
And in terms of mechanics that we've left out, I mean, you should see our design doc. When you start out a new game, you've got all these grand ideas of things that you want to include, and then as you start building it, you go, scope creep. Yeah. Let's pull it back in. Yeah, we can't do that. We haven't got time to do that. And so, I remember an idea we had when we were first starting out was for this one of the items to be a living thing that was a thing on your shoulder that would try and give you clues to various.
That was an interesting idea.
And tell you when you're going wrong or not to trust this person, or it was just this familiar that was in your shop, and he was your narrator, I guess, through the game. But it just felt a bit gimmicky and everything, so that got dropped. And at one point, this shop, it would whisper to you and things like this, and loads of
it's easy to get carried away with adding ideas, isn't it? And then, as you say, you kind of have to rein it in a bit and tighten it all up so that it doesn't just balloon into something crazy. But yeah, as John says, you should see our design doc. There's a lot of stuff in there. Moving on, were you inspired by any specific cultures and mythologies? If so, which ones, and how hard was the research? What tools were of help?
That's an interesting question. I mean, in terms of research and stuff, we don't want to be too influenced by any one thing. So With this game, what we did is we already had the basis of what the game was from Strange Horticulture. So in terms of researching the items and things, what we did is we went around various museums in the UK, read a few books like that one Rob said. But going around museums in the UK was really fun, especially there's a museum in Oxford called the Pitt Rivers Museum, which is this anthropological museum, and it kind of feels like one of the only museums I've been to still stuck in the past. You go into this back room and everything is kind of put in these big glass boxes on the basement floor, and you just walk through them in this, there's no real structure to it, and then all the exhibits are just thrown in there, not really like ordered or anything. Like,
you think that does a disservice to the purity?
No, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautifully created, but not like, there just seems to be more in there than you would have in a it's loosely curated rather than like really heavily, like 6 items in a case with very distinctive labels telling a story. It's much more like, we're going to put the items in, we'll put a few labels about what they are. And they have this cool section on witchcraft with some really cool items that gave us a lot of inspiration. Things like, there's an item which is said to contain a witch in a bottle, which I just love that idea. And so what we did is, through researching these items, we got a kind of idea for sort of some visual styling and also some cool ideas for our own items. In terms of culture, I mean, there's huge amounts of different cultures in that museum, so you kind of get a bit of everything. So there's no one culture that we sort of use. In terms of the story, however, that's slightly different. We borrow quite heavily from, I think, Greek mythology, and various
heavily. It's
there's
loose, like there's a nod to Greek mythology.
There's some nods to Greek mythology, but generally speaking, it's our own ideas and our own thoughts, and so it's
it's got influences. There's nothing particularly specific necessarily. Good question there. What game engine are you using? Easy peasy? Unity. Pretty common for devs, or just indies these days.
Yeah, our history is we started out in Flash, and that's where we learned how to make games. And then when Flash disappeared, we were looking for an engine to use, and at the time Unity felt like the easiest and best option to go with. And because this is our 3rd game we've made in Unity, we feel fairly comfortable in it. So that's why we use it, really.
Yep. Will there be more or fewer endings than Strange Horticulture? Do we want to give that away at this point? I think maybe you need to wait and play the game.
Yeah, wait and play the game and try and find them all, I guess.
Yeah. Ever thought about creating game/riddle books as well? Would be a good way to add lore. That is a really cool idea. We haven't thought necessarily about that specifically. We have thought about board games because, as you might be able to see behind me, quite into board games, and board games were a big inspiration behind Strange Horticulture in the first place, and obviously Strange Antiquities as well. So yeah, that kind of world, like we do think about a lot. We would love to make a board game of it, but it's not really our area of expertise, and it's quite a tough one, and we're busy making games, so not sure if that one's ever going to happen. But would be cool to do some kind of companion work.
What we found really awesome was people coming up to us after a Strange Horticulture came out, saying that they were using the plant and their descriptions in their D&D campaigns. And I just thought that was really awesome that people were using our lore in their own sort of fantasy worlds. And
that's just made me realise that I feel like there's even more scope for that in this game, like with weird items and stuff. There's some really cool items in the game.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Undermere yourself? Will you settle to expand and fill the world around it even more, or head for other horizons after release?
We've grown quite attached to our sort of fictional setting of Undermere. Obviously, for those that aren't aware, Undermere is our fictional alternate history version of Windermere in the Lake District in England, which is a place that we are very fond of. We used to go on holiday in the Lake District when we were younger with our grandparents, and have climbed up many of the fells around there. So it's an area we know fairly well and have always really enjoyed going to, and it's a mystical and magical, wonderful place. I mean, it's the best of Britain, really. And then we sort of took that location, turned it into Undermere, this sort of much more sinister sort of version of a Lake District setting where there are monsters and things that go bump in the night and slightly sinister undertones.
Which, to be fair, the real Lake District feels like there could be those things just lurking around the corner as well.
Well, absolutely. And so, we've, in 2 games, we've sort of delved into sort of like some loose lore and history of the town and things, and we're always like expanding on it and thinking about it. But where we go from here with Undermere, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. At the moment, we're sort of really just trying to get Strange Antiquities finished and out and playable for you guys, and that's really our priority. And beyond that, we're not really thinking too far into the distance, so we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, yeah, we do like Undermere. We're pretty fond of it, so I don't think this is the last chapter.
Yeah, I mean, before we go ahead, the origins of Undermere are quite interesting as well, because we initially, before we even started Strange Horticulture, we were actually making a different game just called Undermere, which is like this point and click adventure game where you play as a girl with her little gnome sidekick. And we just sort of we're messing around in that world already, and when we came up with the idea for Strange Horticulture, we're like, hang on, can't we just set this in Undermere? And
yeah,
the two just sort of worked.
It just
really well.
Placed, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
Right, moving on then. What are the top lessons learned in making Strange Horticulture, and what feedback from the community are you guys applying in the new game? Well, one big thing that we're doing, which is going to be music to your ears, literally, is that we've hired a composer this time around. So there's going to be more than just the one track looping, because that was probably the most consistent negative feedback that we got on Strange Horticulture, was that the music got a bit repetitive and boring. I mean, lots of people didn't mind it, but yeah, we've done a much better job this time around. We're working with a great composer, and we're excited for you guys to hear that, because it is really good. Obviously, we already talked about the closer inspect system that we've improved slightly. I think it's hard to distill exactly what it is that we learned necessarily, but definitely lots of lessons were learned, and I feel like we've improved the game quite a lot from Strange Horticulture.
Yeah, I would say it's come on leaps and bounds in terms of how it all sort of works, how it flows together. Like, it just feels nicer.
It feels like a more polished game.
Yeah. What we have done, or one of the major pieces of feedback we got from Strange Horticulture, was regarding the screen and how some of the text felt small and hard to read. So that's something we approached from the start. Like, how do we make it just feel less like compressed? Cluttered. So rather than being like a single screen like we had in Strange Horticulture with your desk and your plants and your character. It's a bit expanded, so you have your character window that comes in, and your items are all there on your shelves, and you can order them how you want. But your desk is sort of underneath on a separate screen. There are side bits that you can scroll to. There's just a bit more room, and in giving you a bit more room and making the character front and center, it all just feels a bit more like there's room to breathe. The text is bigger. We've got the magnifying glass again, so for people who are struggling, we've got the sort of easier to read fonts as well. So from an accessibility point, we're trying to cover all the bases. And it just feels, just nicer to play in, really, as a location. But with all the cozy features that we had before, like there's still rain on the windows, and
I feel like we've amped up the atmosphere even more than, because that's obviously something that people loved about Strange Horticulture, and I feel like we've gone even cozier.
What we've tried to do is put in as much as we can to address the feedback from Strange Horticulture that we can address. Obviously, there are people who just don't like the game, and for them, there's not much we can do. It is a very similar game, so that's just the way it is. But what we have done is try to put in more of what you guys loved about the first one.
Yeah.
So exploring now, I mean, it's hard not to spoil things, but there's more maps, there's more books, there's just less,
One thing I've just remembered, we removed the countdown timer on exploring. That was, again, another bit of negative feedback that we got. People found that a bit frustrating. It's pretty minor, to be honest, but we just found a different way to handle that.
Yeah, there's
no timer anymore.
It was the only timer that we had in Strange Horticulture, and it would, you could water your plants to fill it back up, but at the same time it did feel annoying. So that's completely removed. So you can go absolutely at your own pace now, and you can explore as much as you want. So,
I think that answers that question. Let's move on. How much of Strange Horticulture will be referenced? We already have returning characters. Will we see any other familiar faces / plants? Yes, is the short answer. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there are quite a few little nods back to Strange Horticulture and some quite fun ones, I think. So
this is one we don't want to spoil for fans of the game. We want you to explore and find those things for yourself, because I think that's more interesting.
But it's definitely the same world.
Same world, returning characters. Just the main thing is that for people who have played Strange Horticulture, we've got little nods and thoughts, but for people who haven't, there is nothing that you need to know from the previous game that will spoil your enjoyment of this one.
Yep. Will we ever get orders from an oddly familiar horticulturist? That's kind of along the same sort of lines there. Well, I mean, the player character in the first game is you are the horticulturist, right? So there isn't really a horticulturist, we didn't want to give a face to the player character at any point. So I guess no is the answer to that.
But there will be returning customers, so
yeah. Thoughts or interest in expanding the world beyond the second game? I guess we kind of already touched on that a bit.
This is one where, at the moment, we don't know what we're going to do next after this one. This is just our priority at the moment. Whether we carry on our Strange series is something that's up for debate, or whether we do something different, we don't know. But that said, it's not where we haven't thought about it. We absolutely have, and we've sort of had a few ideas about where we could take the series. From a personal point of view, what I would like to do is a sort of version where you're collecting and trapping. I would say tracking down, collecting and trapping mythical creatures, and sort of. So I don't know how that works yet. But the gameplay I think would be slightly different. It would be sort of much more like about identifying clues about where creatures might be, exploring to find them, like using various tracking like skills that you've learned and everything, and then a sort of like collectum approach where you're collecting all these beasts and you're trying to create a huge menagerie of these amazing, wonderful creatures. That said, art-wise, it's a huge step up, and I think the only way to do that would be to probably in a maybe a 3D world. I don't know, but I'm a huge fan of the X-Files, and I really want to do like a Monster of the Week sort of version of this where you're tracking down mythical monsters.
Yeah, I think it's a cool idea. Yeah, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see on that one, because we certainly don't have any concrete plans. We got some ideas floating around. Are there any mechanics, characters, plot points you'd originally planned but won't make it to the game? Again, kind of already touched on this a bit, but yeah, a lot. There's a lot of stuff.
The plot point on that one, honestly, the plot is one of the hardest things to bash out in these games, because we're stuck in this like quite rigid framework of characters coming to you, asking for an item, and then going away, and you're sort of like this character that exists in the world, and the plot is going on all around you, and they're just like, and you're just sort of this guy in the shop just minding his own business, and suddenly you're thrust into the middle of this like huge thing that's playing out, and your role becomes much bigger. But the plot changed, and so many times over the course of a lot game, and ideas that got thrown out that we really liked. To give one example, we tried for ages to get in this idea. So basically, for people who played Strange Horticulture, right at the end in the epilogue, there is this group of people you go to see called the what are they called, Rob?
The Order of the Black Veil.
That's it, the Order of the Black Veil. And we had this whole concept of the Order of the Black Veil, and they're based like off. So in this version, you go to the map of Undermere is the town rather than the wider area, and the Order of the Black Veil are located somewhere on the wider area, and they just felt too far out of the action, and we really wanted to include them as a cool like Easter egg, but it just wasn't working. So
they do get a mention still. They
had a massive role in our original idea for the plot, but that had to get dropped, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Are there more people working on the games directly or as contributors / licensed? Well, we already mentioned that we're working with a composer this time round. So that's one.
Yeah, we're working. Just to give some more detail on that, it's a guy called Benjamin Young. And he's been doing some great work for us. We're super excited for you guys to hear his music. Some of it has been in our latest trailer, and obviously you'll hear some of it in the demo, so it's really cool. We hope you like it. But other than that, it's just the two of us.
John does the artwork, I write the code, and together we kind of come up with all the stuff that goes into the game. Obviously, we've got a publisher as well, that's Iceberg. So we're working with them, and they help us out with a whole bunch of stuff, marketing and production and all that. But yeah, for the most part, it is just us. Alrighty. Will the outcome of Strange Horticulture affect story in this, even if only a singular mention, as in import a save? Just curious if the two games are tied together. Again, as we've touched on, we wanted it to be a standalone game that you don't have to have played the first one to enjoy it, so it's not going to directly affect it. So no.
I mean, it would be kind of cool to have had that, how you play through Strange Horticulture and the ending that you get would filter into how this played, but that's a lot of branching narratives and a lot of extra work, and it's for a small 2-man team, like it's just beyond our scope to get this done. So as much as that sounds really cool in principle, what it involves is massive. I mean, you just opening a can of worms on
and also we wanted to tell a new story. We felt like we wrapped up the previous one quite nicely in a bunch of different ways, and we kind of wanted to do the same thing here but with a separate story. So yeah, that's the direction that we went in. Have you considered DLC for either Strange game?
So that is something that we considered with Strange Horticulture. We talked about it. We came up with a sort of story idea, actually. We were in the process of sort of going down that route, and then we sort of decided to ourselves, what would we rather do? Make DLC for Strange Horticulture, or work on a bigger, more polished version? And we sort of stepped back from doing DLC and just thought we'd rather just make a new game and put in all the extra things that we wanted to put into Strange Horticulture into the new game, which this is kind of like a DLC for Strange Horticulture in a way. It's so it's just we're doing it as a separate game, that's all.
Yep. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Oh, we're on to the last question. Which of you two is the more creative and which the more abstract thinker?
I mean, there's no contest that Rob's the more abstract thinker, for sure. He's the one that comes up with all the sort of ideas. Well, not all of the ideas. No, there's very much a collaborative process, but I would say the majority of the starting point for a lot of the ideas comes from Rob. Certainly, Strange Horticulture came from his idea, and then through a lot of back and forth and discussing it, we bashed it into what it became. But in terms of who's the more creative, well, I mean, it depends how you define creative.
Yeah, exactly. We've both got our different avenues of creativity, and what I would just want to add to that is that it is very much a collaborative process. I don't think either of us could do it without the other one, and I think it helps. In case we didn't, I think we already mentioned it. We are brothers, and we have quite similar visions, I think, for what Strange Horticulture, Strange Antiquities, Undermere, what they all are, and what we want. Yeah, how we want to present that. So I think it helps that we're on the same page about stuff, and if ever I'm coming up with something and I'm feeling it's not quite working, just, I chat with John and we hammer it out together.
I mean,
it's very collaborative.
We're both creative in different ways. I am creative art. I mean, I'm the artist side of it. So I do all the visual side of things, and Rob would really struggle to do that kind of stuff at the level that I do it. But likewise, he does all the programming, and that in itself is very creative, and I haven't got a clue how any of that works. So we have our distinct roles, but in terms of the wider way we work, it is a collaborative process. Even now when we're putting together, we're working through the game and trying to polish it up as much as possible and find all the bugs and streamline things. We are coming up, we're clashing, not necessarily clashing, but we're having debates about how best a feature might work. And, just yesterday we were having a big debate about something with regards to one part of the closer inspecting and how that works. And it's a back and forth process, and we had a differing opinion, and we're trying to find a compromise that suits both of us. And it's kind of fun and sometimes stressful at times. Like, if one of us feels very strongly about something but the other one doesn't, and it's kind of like, well, that's not important. I mean, it doesn't help that I'm very much a perfectionist, and I see even little things that I want to fix as soon as possible. And Rob is like, well, it's not as pressing. Let's just leave it for now.
You know, we want to get the game out, right?
Yeah. So we're trying to get it, do as much as we can, but also not get bogged down in the little details, because otherwise we'll never release this game. But we're feeling really confident about how it's coming along now, and hopefully you guys won't have to wait too long before we're able to release it.
Yep. Cool. Well, as I said, we've run out of questions. The pot is empty. So I guess that kind of wraps it up. So if you haven't checked out the demo yet, please do. Please leave us a review if you've played it. And wishlist the game, of course. And yeah, keep
honestly,
socials and all that sort of stuff.
All of this stuff really helps us. We are a very small indie team. You know, it's just the two of us. And so anything that you guys can do to help promote our game and, spread the word to your friends and family, to people who might enjoy it, it just really helps. And
we massively appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
We've heard just amazing stories about people who've spread the word on strange horticulture, and it's always incredibly well received on our end. We're very appreciative.
We love every review that you guys write for us, and we know how much time it takes to do that, and it's brilliant, and we really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. That's us done. We're out.
Yeah, see you later. Enjoy the game. The demo, even.